Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Marksman Daily. Today we're going to be going over a few high-level team fights. In each of these fights, the marksman has near perfect execution of a concept. The three main ideas we're going to talk about are segmenting targets, backing off, and following up. First, let's think about each of these things at a high level. Segmenting targets all comes down to finding the weak link in an enemy's lineup. People constantly make mistakes and get out of position regardless of what elo they're in, so punishing these mistakes revolves around being in a position where you can freely hit them without their teammates ganging up on you. Backing off might seem extremely simple, but it's something that many marksmen don't know how to do. The reason that Pro AD carries have such high KDAs is because marksmen are great at defending and pushing. Generally speaking, it's better to live through a teamfight on marksmen than to trade one for one. Doing this right comes down to threat assessment and minimap awareness. Knowing where the enemy is coming from and what they can do is the best way to understand if you should back off. Lastly, following up is an art that few marksmen master. Oftentimes, your jungle, support, or top lane will have an engaged ability that will offer what we call dead time. This time is where the enemy is stunned or out of range. The best way to use time like this is to put yourself in a position where your champion can be most effective. As we play through each of these team fights, we'll further clarify and get more in depth on each of these concepts. And without further ado, let's hop in. In this first fight, we have CJ's Veritas playing as Tristana. Before we play the clip, let's take stock of this situation. Blitz is about to get caught up, and there's a numbers advantage for the red team. Far away, Tristana is clearing the bot wave. Even if she responds immediately, it's going to take a while to get here. The numbers advantage here has taken down Jarvan, and Jace is about to fall as well. This is looking like a disastrous teamfight wipe for the blue team. Tristana is finally here. Now take a look at this. This is the most perfect example of segmenting targets that we could find. While what's happening here isn't amazing, since Maokai is meant to take the brunt of the fight, keep this type of positioning in mind. Not only is Tristana far out of range of the enemy team, she's going to be hitting Maokai at a pincer angle away from where her teammates could be attacking him. This matters because of AoE effectiveness. Assuming that Talia is going to move this way and begin attacking, it's better to have your team's threats spread out so that you can't both get taken out by AoE. Usually this just means that you don't want to stand next to your mid laner. The ally Talia is also making great use of this concept and understood that the enemy team would have to support by going through this choke. By setting this area up as a trap, she's bought crucial time to kill the isolated Maokai. Tristana finishes off Maokai, but things are looking pretty dangerous, with the two enemy groups looking to attack from both angles. There's a few ways this can play out. Tristana could retreat to the blast cone to get out of the fight, or if she wants to fight, she can position to attack one of these groups. If you were playing Tristana here, would you retreat to the blast cone, attack Azir and Xerath, or attack Varus and Nidalee? All three of the blue teammates were ready to collapse on Varus and Nidalee, who appropriately backed off. It's good to remember that these guys are Korean challengers and are all excellent at teamfighting. If the Varus and Nidalee were lower elo players, they could have easily fallen for this. The best play would have been to ping them and collapse with your team. Things aren't looking too great here, and the enemy has a great spread out position. If Talia goes down here, the numbers advantage will be too much. Knowing this, Veritas heals Talia, who flashes away at the last second. Nidalee then flashes forward, and let's check out the positioning here. Where would you move here as Tristana? With Rocket Jump, moving here is the best play. If you think back to the intro, you want to be hitting the enemy with no chance of their teammates helping. This position builds the most distance from Azir, Varus, and Xerath without being out of range of Nidalee. You'd move the same way even if you didn't have Rocket Jump, or if you were on a different marksman. Rocket Jump just makes it faster. It's now a 2v3. With Azir going in for the stun on Blitz, he's isolating himself. While this may seem like the breaking point of the teamfight, getting into a position to isolate him means moving to this exact spot. This also involves playing on the ranges a bit, and this is extremely masterful of Veritas, because he glides just out of range of the Azir R. Now Azir is down, and if Xerath gets into range, it's going to be all over, since even a 1v1 against Varus is going to look pretty tricky. To get the best chance in this fight, Veritas has to segment Varus and also use the terrain to his advantage. The best way to segment Varus away from Xerath is to use this distance between them. As long as Tristana keeps moving further away from Xerath while fighting, he'll have to keep playing catch up. This is actually extremely hard to do, especially in real time, so it's okay if you feel overwhelmed. Let's look and see what Veritas does. By jumping up, Veritas ended up forcing Varus' flash to follow him and is going to just barely dodge the Xerath W. With that out of the way, Varus is now completely isolated for the 1v1. Veritas ends up winning the fight by a mere auto attack, meaning that if he had taken any extra damage this whole time, the fight would have been lost. Even now, he has to use this flash to catch Xerath off guard, banking on the surprise that that extra quarter of a second reaction time lost will get his extra auto attack in. Overall, this was really insane play from Veritas, and we can't wait to see him next split. Now, let's watch Keith, the Toucan himself, play Jhin. His team is looking to siege mid, but there's a lot going on here. Let's do a quick threat assessment. Rengar has just gone invisible, so he wants to be near his team. Kennen is on the right side of the lane, coming in for an ultimate flank, while Tristana is on the left side of the lane, looking to ult Jhin and his teammates into the Kennen ult. This is a pretty terrifying flank position, but they're not going to have very strong front line. As his team dives, Rengar comes into the stealth to support Jace. This is a relief, since it would have been really hard for Jhin to deal with Rengar. Many players on Jhin, or really any marksman, would have tunnel visioned onto the hook Jace and moved forward. However, Keith had his eye on the minimap and he sees the Kennen coming in for an ult. He gets his fourth shot off for the movement speed and flashes away from Kennen. The choice not to move forward was probably the most important moment of this teamfight. This is because it gave him enough room to flash out of the Kennen ultimate before getting stunned. He's now successfully backed off and can re-engage with his ultimate. If this seems really Jhin specific, the same sequence of actions would have worked on Lucian, Ashe, Ezreal, or Caitlyn, as they all have long-range ultimates that could keep them impacting the fight. The most interesting part about this play is that backing off to re-engage is something most people do really well on Jhin. However, it's really important to take away that you can do this type of move on other champions, not just Jhin. Backing off to dodge and engage might lose you some damage output overall, but not as much as if you just die to the engage. As his shots come out, Keith and his team destroy this teamfight. The enemy team had gone all in on flanking, and Keith played against it perfectly. He even gets the Kennen with a sweet W. This last teamfight is from Cloud9's Sneaky, and it's all about the art of following up on an engage. As he walks up here, Sneaky is going to get a great dodge on this flash hook to avoid getting picked. His teammates quickly back him up, and he's leading the charge. As the engage from Bard comes out, we're about to have 2 seconds of dead time where Sneaky doesn't have any targets to select. If you were Miss Fortune here, where on the screen would you move to best follow up on this Bard ultimate? So the best position for Sneaky to be in is right here next to the wave. This is because of Jarvan's positioning. MF's damage comes from her ultimate, and Jarvan can easily interrupt it with his EQ combo. When you're following up on an engage, especially one that creates dead time, like Bard ult, Talia wall, or Jarvan ult, you want to be weighing 3 things: viability, damage output, and safety. First, you want to figure out if your spot is viable. Can you actually get there in time? Next, you need to think about how much damage you can do in that spot. Lastly, you want to think about if it's even safe to be there. In this case, moving next to the wall takes no time, allows him to hit multiple targets with his ultimate, and he won't get interrupted by a CC from Jarvan. The same positioning would also be perfect for an Ezreal ult, Varus ult, or a Lucian culling, due to the choke point created by the turret debris. As the Bard ult ends, Sneaky's R melts Jarvan, Thresh, and Kalista, completely winning the teamfight off of Bard's engage. Even as Fizz's ult hits, it doesn't matter because Sneaky has already done plenty of work in the teamfight. With these 3 fights in the bag, let's take a step back and look at what we've covered. First, we saw Veritas destroy an entire enemy team by segmenting and isolating them. He did this by always staying out of range of the enemy group and picking off targets that were weak links in the enemy frontline. Then we saw Keith playing Jhin, where he picked the perfect moment to back off, which nullified Kennen's engage as he destroyed the enemy team from range. Knowing when to back off and re-engage in fights comes down to map awareness and threat assessment. If you can keep an eye on who's coming and from what angle, that's half of the battle. Lastly, we had Sneaky melt the entire enemy team off of the back of a Bard ultimate. Whenever you're following up on a big engage, it's critical to pick a great spot to attack from. Whenever you don't have a target, always be assessing spots for viability, damage output, and safety. This daily had a bit of a different style than our mission-focused dailies. We think it's important for you to see how teamfights play out at the highest level of play. This is because after closely watching enough of these amazing marksmen play out fights, you'll start subconsciously moving in similar ways in your own games. That being said, we're always happy to hear feedback. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let us know below. Either way, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.